Have you ever heard the expression, Achilles' heel? It's a phrase we use all the time to describe a fatal weakness, a single point of vulnerability in an otherwise strong person or system. But where did this saying come from? Today, we're journeying back to the final heart-wrenching days of the Trojan War to uncover the story behind the saying, the story of the death of the greatest Greek warrior who ever lived, Achilles. Our tale picks up in the thick of the brutal 10-year siege of Troy. The Greeks, led by King Agamemnon, have been camped outside the city's impenetrable walls, their ranks thinned by plague, infighting, and the relentless grind of war. Their greatest champion, Achilles, had recently withdrawn from the fight due to a bitter dispute with Agamemnon over a war prize, the maiden Briseis. His absence was a devastating blow to the Greek morale. Without Achilles, the tide of the war turned dramatically in favor of the Trojans, led by their valiant prince, Hector. Desperate, the Greeks tried to persuade Achilles to return, but his pride was too wounded. He refused. It was then that his dearest friend, his companion since childhood, Patroclus, made a fateful decision. Seeing the desperation of his comrades, Patroclus begged Achilles to let him wear his divine armor and lead the Myrmidons, Achilles' elite warriors, into battle. He hoped that the sight of Achilles' famous armor would terrify the Trojans and give the Greeks the breathing room they so desperately needed. Achilles, with a heavy heart, agreed, but he gave Patroclus one strict warning. Drive the Trojans back from the ships, but do not pursue them to the walls of Troy. Patroclus, clad in the glorious armor of Achilles, was a whirlwind on the battlefield. The Trojans, believing the mighty Achilles had returned, broke and fled. Intoxicated by his success, Patroclus forgot Achilles' warning. He chased the fleeing Trojans all the way to the city gates. It was there that his luck ran out. The god Apollo, a protector of Troy, intervened. He struck Patroclus from behind, stunning him and dislodging his helmet and armor. Exposed and disoriented, Patroclus was then wounded by a Trojan soldier named Euphorbus. And finally, he was finished off by the great Hector himself. When news of Patroclus' death reached Achilles, his world shattered. A howl of pure, unadulterated grief escaped him, a sound so terrible it was heard by his mother, the sea goddess Thetis, in the depths of the ocean. His rage and sorrow were boundless. The man who had sat idly by, nursing his pride, was gone. In his place was a spectre of vengeance, consumed by a single burning desire to make Hector pay for what he had done. Thetis knew her son's fate was tied to Hector's. She had warned him that if he killed Hector, his own death would soon follow. But Achilles didn't care. A life without Patroclus was no life at all. He reconciled with Agamemnon, his previous grievances now seeming petty and insignificant. His mother commissioned a new set of armor from the blacksmith god, Hephaestus, even more magnificent than the last. When Achilles donned this new god-forged armor, he was a terrifying sight, radiating a divine and deadly light. He re-entered the war like a force of nature, a tempest of destruction. The Trojan army scattered before him like leaves in a storm. He cut down warrior after warrior, his grief fueling a battle fury that was unstoppable. He was searching for only one man. Finally, outside the Scaean gates of Troy, he found him. Hector, despite the pleas of his parents, King Priam and Queen Hecuba, chose to stand and face his destiny. The duel that followed is one of the most famous in all of literature. It was a clash of titans, the best of the Greeks against the best of the Trojans. For a time, they were evenly matched, their spears clanging against divinely crafted shields. But fate and the gods were on Achilles' side. Athena, disguised as Hector's brother, tricked the Trojan prince, giving Achilles a crucial opening. Achilles, who knew the weak points of his old armor, the very armor Hector was now wearing, saw a small gap near the collarbone. He thrust his spear with all his might, and the point drove through, severing Hector's windpipe. With his dying breath, Hector pleaded with Achilles to return his body to his parents for a proper burial. But Achilles, his heart still hardened by grief, refused. In a final brutal act of desecration, he tied Hector's body to the back of his chariot by the ankles and dragged him in the dust around the walls of Troy, in full view of his horrified family and countrymen. For 12 days, Achilles abused the body, yet the gods, taking pity on the fallen hero, protected it from decay and mutilation. The gods finally intervened. Zeus sent the messenger god Hermes to guide King Priam, Hector's elderly father, on a perilous nighttime journey into the heart of the Greek camp. Unseen, Priam entered Achilles' tent and fell to his knees, grasping the hands of the man who had killed his son. He begged Achilles to think of his own father, Peleus, and to take pity on a grieving parent. He offered a magnificent ransom for his son's body. Seeing the old king's sorrow, Achilles was finally moved. His own rage gave way to a shared sense of grief. He saw in Priam the same pain he felt, the same love for a lost one. He wept with the king, not as enemies, but as two men united by loss. Achilles accepted the ransom, and with great respect returned Hector's body to his father. He even agreed to a 12-day truce so that the Trojans could properly mourn and bury their champion. For a brief moment, humanity triumphed over the brutality of war. But the truce was only a temporary pause. The war machine ground on. The Greeks, emboldened by Achilles' return and the death of Hector, pushed their advantage, storming towards the Trojan gates. Achilles himself was at the forefront, a seemingly invincible warrior, cutting down Trojan after Trojan, including the Amazon queen Penthesilea and the Ethiopian king Memnon, who had come to Troy's aid. He was on the verge of taking the city, of achieving the final victory he had fought so long for. Yet, Achilles did not live to see the dawn of that victory. His fate, prophesied long ago, was about to be fulfilled. As he fought near the Scaean gates, the very place where he had slain Hector the god Apollo, who had never forgiven Achilles for his sacrilege and the killing of his favored Trojans, decided it was time to intervene once more. Apollo saw Hector's younger brother, Paris, the very same Paris whose abduction of Helen had started this whole bloody war. Paris was not a great warrior like his brother. He was an archer, often considered cowardly for fighting from a distance. But in that moment, he became an instrument of divine will. Guided by Apollo's unseen hand, Paris drew his bow and loosed an arrow. It wasn't a shot of incredible skill, but one of pure, guided destiny. The arrow flew across the battlefield, a small, dark streak against the chaos, and it struck the one and only mortal place upon the hero's body, his heel. Why the heel? The story goes that when Achilles was an infant, his mother Thetis sought to make him immortal. She took him to the river Styx, the river that flowed through the underworld, and dipped him in its magical waters. This granted him invulnerability everywhere the water touched. But that she held him by one heel, and that tiny spot remained dry, untouched by the river's power. It was his single point of weakness, a secret known to the gods. The wound was small, but it was fatal. The great Achilles, the son of a goddess, the mightiest warrior of his generation, stumbled. He looked down in disbelief at the arrow protruding from his ankle. The pain was immense, but the shock was greater. He, who had faced down armies, who had dueled with the greatest heroes, was brought down by a single well-aimed shot from the bow of Paris. The son of Thetis fell, his magnificent god-forged armor clattering on the dusty ground, shining like the setting sun. A massive fight erupted over his body. The Greeks, led by the great hero Ajax, fought desperately to recover their fallen champion, while the Trojans swarmed, eager to capture his divine armor as a trophy. After a long and bloody struggle, Ajax managed to carry Achilles' body back to the Greek camp, while Odysseus held off the Trojan advance. The grief in the Greek camp was immeasurable, rivaling even the sorrow for Patroclus. For 17 days and nights, they mourned him. Thetis and her sea nymphs rose from the ocean to lament their fallen hero, and even the Muses, the goddesses of the arts, came to sing his funeral dirge. Thus ended the mightiest of Achaean warriors. But his name, his glory, his story became eternal, sung by poets and told by storytellers for all ages, a timeless legend of rage, grief, and the tragic fate of a hero who was almost a god. His story reminds us that even the greatest among us can have a weakness, a single fatal flaw, an Achilles' heel. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Troy. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more tales from mythology and history, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments which myth or legend you'd like to hear about next. Until then, stay curious